What's up, guys? We're back. Welcome to another episode of Coast to Coast. I'm Robert Bentulin, joined by Mateo Mayorga. What's up, man?
Yo, it is good to be back. Today is such a big day. It's still the morning of the 29th, the super fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford. I have been waiting months for this bout, and it's biggest one in like almost a decade. How are you, man? I'm so hyped.
Good, good, man. I agree with that. It's also nice just to be talking basketball again. There's only so much we could talk about during the off season. I promise you, we'll get you more content once the season starts rolling around. But like I said, it's always the NBA. There's always a new storyline every time. Now we have a letter from the NBA commissioner itself about the Damian Lillard trade stance that he only wants the Heat to his agent and the rest of the 30 NBA teams. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Jaylen Brown and the Celtics finally agreeing to that max contract over $300 million. And then we're going to talk about soccer, but also in conjunction with the NBA about Kylian Mbappe turning down $778 million for 1 year from Saudi Arabia. And should we be worried as NBA fans about Saudi Arabia as a country getting into the NBA and dipping their toes with players like maybe Giannis and other star players offering them a boatload of money? Should we worry about them potentially leaving? We're going to talk about all that. But let's start with the Damian Lillard situation, Mateo. Once again, we're here. I said be patient. It's going to happen. But I still have not changed my stance. But with that said, Adam Silver sent out basically a note or a memo, whatever you want to call it, to the rest of the 30 NBA teams that what basically Damian Lillard is doing and his agent is not cool. If he does it again, if he remains on his trade stance to just the Heat publicly, he will be quote unquote not suspended, but there will be issues to be had. He'll be in trouble if he does it again. I don't see why this is an issue when we have players like Kevin Durant who demanded a trade to the Suns and got it. Kyrie Irving, who's demanded multiple trades throughout his career, and guess what? Got traded recently to the Mavericks. We have James Harden, ironically on the Nets, by the way, who has requested multiple trades and has gotten everything he's wanted. It's never been an issue. There's other players as well I can mention. Those are the three that come to the top of my head, but it was never an issue there. But all of a sudden now it is. So with that said, Mateo, I'll give you the first words on that. What do you think about the whole situation?
Pathetic, actually, man. And the person who sent the letter specifically was Dan Rube. He's lead counsel for the NBA,
Yeah.
also one of the executive VPs. This is, you know, I guess an intimidation tactic if I've ever seen one. They didn't go this hard when Anthony Davis wanted to go to the Lakers or when Paul George wanted to also get out to LA. It's kind of ludicrous that they're doing it now in this Damian Lillard situation. People will probably contest that, oh well, they had a fewer time left on their contract, but not every situation is the same. Now, what they are citing, or at least Dan Rube did in the letter, is Section 18 of the CBA, which says any player, or for clarity, any player, rep, or person acting with authority on behalf of a player who publicly expresses a desire to be traded to another team shall be subject to a fine and or suspension. The maximum fine, Rob, is $150,000, which is equivalent to about maybe 25K more than what he makes in a quarter, which is nothing to him. So it's not really, something that he's going to be like, oh, wow, like that's really going to defer me. But like, it is pathetic that they did try to do this to kind of intimidate a little bit. I don't think it's ultimately going to work because it talked about him or his representatives, Rob, someone like a friendly agent, not a friendly, excuse me, I'm sorry, a friendly reporter, like how everyone knows Chris Haynes and him are tight, can pretty much express his wishes in the context of reporting things like, this is what I know about the situation, and get his point out there without Lillard getting in trouble. But it's kind of crazy, to tell you the truth, because my gut feeling is that the Heat, like the league, doesn't want to see the balance of power shift to the Miami Heat. What do you think?
Listen, here. I think I speak for a lot of NBA fans. I've been on Twitter the last couple of weeks. Well, really, last couple of days, as in terms of this report that came out. But I think I speak for a lot of NBA fans around the Miami Heat, particularly. It's like, look, you see all these superstar players. I'm not even gonna like I mentioned the last three: James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie. Let's put them aside. Let's talk about maybe a couple of years ago, Kawhi Leonard, when he refused to play for the Spurs. He didn't want to play. He purposely sat out games. No one knew he was hurt. Was never an issue for the league then. Was never an issue for Adam Silver. But once he got traded to Toronto, he got his way, and magically he was all better, and they won a championship. We see this with numerous players, man, all the time. How many superstars have we seen in the last really 5, 6 years do this and get what they want? Virtually every single time a star player demands a trade, they ultimately get what they want. It's never an issue. But you're right. The Miami Heat are a very popular team. Pat Riley is I think every NBA fan who follows the NBA knows who Pat Riley is. So it's obvious he's not, some under the radar guy. I can guarantee you about what a casual NBA fan probably knows 5 GMs from the top of their head. Everybody knows who Pat Riley is. So it's obviously a bigger story when he's trying to make a move. But that's my opinion on it. I think it's kind of sad. I don't know why Adam Silver's getting in the way of this. If Dame wants to play where he wants to play, let him play there. He's been loyal for 10 years to one organization. He could have taken the easy way out, numerous times and then do it. So now that he wants to finally do right by him, he's 33 years old, wants to win a championship. I think Adam Silver and a lot of fans know that he can't win one there. So why can't he, go to a destination he wants to go to?
For sure, man. About the Kawhi thing, I don't think he was purposely, just to clarify, sitting in the games in San Antonio. Like his leg was really, or specifically like his quad knee area was really beat to what. But
yeah, you're right about that. But I think he exaggerated the amount of games he missed.
I do not know. But the whole Lillard situation, going back to that, I'm hearing a lot of people say it's bad for the league that a guy with 4 years left on his deal, or multiple years, like 3 or 4 left on his deal, wanting out and demanding one specific team is bad for the league. Well, speak to any contract lawyer in the real world and they'll tell you, when one side doesn't live up to one end of the deal, what usually happens to such arrangement? It's null and void, correct? And I don't know how anybody could contend that the Blazers have been, trying to help him when they sat him this year, Rob, in a soft tank. They picked his replacement. Let's not also forget how in the past they gave $160 million to Mo Harkless, Myers Leonard, Evan Turner, Alan Crabb, all in the same summer. And I know that wasn't the same representation. I know, the same leadership in the front office as there is now, Joe Cronin. But time is of the essence, and it's a little too late now for them to try to get right with Lillard, especially when you take the guy who is supposed to replace him. I really want to stress that point, but it's really sad. I think if he still holds firm to his opinion, like, he will eventually get his way. The NBA's memo was pretty interesting because it said that his agent Aaron Goodwin was not entirely truthful, which is interesting there, to say the least. But what he, to the letter of, according to the letter of the law, he can't tell teams don't trade for my client. But what he has been doing, according to this memo, is telling them he will be super unhappy. But basically telling them that he's going to be super unhappy. Like, you're basically telling them the other thing in the grand scheme of things. But this is just a nasty situation that I think each side is just trying to show who's got the bigger what. But I think Lillard's eventually going to win. This is a players' league.
Listen, I agree with you. Listen, the Miami Heat still have one huge advantage, and that is, why would a team give up real assets to get a player, A, who's not going to be happy there, and B, take on that contract for a guy who doesn't want to be there? He's 33 years old. I can understand if he's 30 or 29, even 31, but 33, you're really starting to get to the end of your I guess, so-called prime. But listen, they have that. They have no team is going to want to dish out that much money plus real assets to get a player that doesn't want to be there. I think that's the huge benefit for the Miami Heat. Damian Lillard, after all this, has still said publicly to it through his agent that he still wants to be on the Miami Heat. He won't change his stance on that, and he's gonna do what it takes to get there. And with that said, I think the Heat are the clear front runners to get him. It's just a matter of time whether they get him before the season or at the trade deadline, and we have to wait longer. Fine, but I do ultimately think he's going to be in a Heat jersey. Just a matter of time.
Like this is a guy that's the caliber of Damian Lillard. Let's like not confuse this with someone from the NBA's middle class trying to make these extraordinary demands. The best when you're usually the best at what you are in your profession. You usually decide where you get to work. I'm on the side of labor. I don't think this is the situation like very similar to Kevin Durant a year ago in the summer where he requested out with 4 years left on his deal. Like he had done nothing for the Brooklyn Nets, and they had basically bent over backwards since they signed him. And with the last thing I want to say on this, Rob, what's worse for the league? A guy like Lillard asking out with so many years left on his deal with potentially setting a bad precedent, or him withering away into obscurity, go either in Portland or being sent away to the equivalent of NBA Siberia because the Portland Trailblazers needed to get, the quote unquote best package, which right now has not come.
I'm going to go with the second one simply because look, at the end of the day, this is a players league. I think this really turned into a players league about 4 or 5 years ago. When was the last time we saw a superstar not get his way? Honestly, from the top of my head, I can't remember. Maybe there's one, but not many, man. Usually every time a guy asks to go to a particular place, it happens.
I think Kobe. I think he wanted out.
Yeah, Kobe. But that was a different time where GM still had power and teams and owners still have power. Now it's really the players, man. At the end of the day, look, if Portland doesn't do them right, I really believe that other players wouldn't want to play there. If any chance of them signing any free agent in the future, because it's a small market like Portland, they have no chance because of what's going on here. In my opinion, I think if I were Portland, I'd take the best offer possible from the Heat and just move on. I do understand them waiting longer. Maybe they want Jaime Jaquez or Jovic, both included. I can understand why you would wait longer, but at some point, you just got to bite the bullet and move on. Like you said earlier, they did draft their point guard for the future. He's going to be a tremendous player, and Scoot Henderson is an elite talent. We saw that for the first 15 minutes of summer league before they put him to the rest. We saw that in the G League. Obviously, it's lesser talent, but you could obviously see he's going to be a special player. And why would you even want to ruin his development and put Dame and him along together? They both need the ball to be impactful. It just doesn't make a lot of sense from all sides of it.
Absolutely. It's a shame that Aaron Goodwin has been a little quote unquote slapped on the wrist with this letter. But listen, again, I think it just takes speaking to a friendly reporter, and I don't think you can do it now publicly like on a video now, but like if you got someone breaking the news, as they say, like Haynes, you could still kind of get the message out, like, or the narrative that you need.
Yeah. It's funny. Every time we in the podcast, we always talk about, we're not going to talk about Damian Lillard anymore until he gets to the Miami Heat or gets traded. But there's always some sort of drama that goes on with this. I will say this is one of the more complicated trade scenarios I've seen in a long time. This has definitely gotten the most noise than others. The Kevin Durant trade request last year made some noise, but they really put that to bed pretty quickly. This is something that this divorce needs to end and move on, make everyone happy. Let's be honest, man. The Blazers could still get a pretty good haul for a 33-year-old superstar. Let's say it's Jaime Jaquez, Jovic, couple first, and Hero. Although there are reports now there's an avenue for the Heat to keep Hero. You want to briefly touch on that for a second?
Yeah, I don't think it's look, mathematically it is possible. Our guy at the network, Greg Sylvander, was mentioning it, but I just think it is so unlikely. And here's the thing: Rose reported like a couple of weeks ago that the Portland Trail Blazers were not interested in Hero. I think that's stupid. I think he's someone who could play with Anthony Simons because, Hero at his position was one of the better playmaking shooting guards in the league. He is someone who can play multiple roles, catch and shoot also as a distributor or, as a scorer who has more usage on the floor. But, I hate this notion that, that Tyler Hero isn't this, very good player. He's relative to his age at 23 years old. He's a great player. He was the sixth man of the year in 2022. And this past season, 2022, 2023, he averaged just as many points starting. And here's the thing. He's averaged the same amount of minutes in the fourth quarters in each of these seasons. So he's very reliable. Yeah, people are saying in his six-man year, he played a lot against a lot of bench players. Yeah, but he was closing against the best, and he did that this year again as a starter. It's very unfortunate that he broke his hand in two places. But listen, man, the Heat's regular season was a roller coaster, and it really would have been so much worse without that dude. He is a very good player. And again, relative to his age at 23, great. I think it was a mistake if that report, that Woj report, and I have every inclination to believe it is true. It's pretty stupid for Portland to say we're not interested in Tyler Hero.
I agree. I don't see an avenue where the Heat can keep him. I think ultimately this is going to be a 3-team trade down the road with Brooklyn or the Jazz or someone. But look, everyone knows the story about Tyler Hero in the bubble. The first year he was fantastic. Yeah, the second year he had a little bit of a struggle of his sophomore years, but this guy's 23 years old. He can shoot the rock. He has handles. Defensively, he really works to get better. He will never be an elite defender, but guess what? He tries on the defensive end. That's fine. That's more than you can say for a lot of players in this league. He's not a superstar, but he's a damn good player. And I think him turning into this all of a sudden negative asset is just ridiculous. I mean, I would take a 23-year-old guy who can shoot on a pretty decent contract considering where the NBA is going. And most teams around the NBA, he would be the third worst case fourth best player in the team. That's pretty good to get in a trade for someone who's locked up at 23 years old. So this notion that he's a bad asset is just stupid.
I agree with that. And to touch real quick on his second year struggles, the Heat were one of the four teams that started playing again, like one of the two teams that started playing again 72 days after their season ended. It wasn't really an off season, and that was at the conclusion of his rookie season. So, it's hard when you're that much of a young player and, you've been beat down with, a long playoff run and you had no recovery. But Tyler Hero is a great player. I think he's going to be in this deal. Like, listen, it's mathematically possible for the Heat to get Lillard without him, but it would be like the worst malpractice I have ever seen. And I actually wrote about this recently, that if Portland were to it would just be Portland and Miami, and Hero's not involved. Like, you got to send Joe Cronin to the gulag, man. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think more of this is about Joe Cronin's ego than really the organization and what's best for the team. Even the Portland fans are to the point where they just want to get this over. Like, they've come to the conclusion that Dame's going to be gone. Just get what you can get and move on. Obviously, you don't want to give him for 10 cents on the dollar, but if you can get him for 70, 80 cents on the dollar, I'd take it and move on, because there's not many teams, as I mentioned earlier, that are going to give up a lot to get a guy who doesn't want to be there. So if he can give up pretty good stuff, which I think by now we've gone through all the packages you could possibly get. Most of them are pretty good. So that's where we're at now. There's only so much we can say about Dame. We're like a broken record at this point. We've gone over the packages. Everyone at this point for months knows what the best packages we can offer. Whether we want to see the Nets in the deal or the Jazz in the deal to take on Hero to give the Blazers more stuff to make them happy, we'll see. But I ultimately think this will be a 3-team trade. I ultimately think he's going to be in a Heat jersey, but whether it's at the start of the season or by the trade deadline, I can't tell you. So we're just going to have to wait. So speaking of contracts, by the way, let's get to Jaylen Brown's richest contract in NBA history. 5 years, $304 million, supermax contract. This is big news for a lot of reasons. The Celtics bit the bullet and they gave Jaylen Brown, who everyone knows is their second best player, still a really, really good talent, the max contract. Jason Tatum is lined up, I believe, next year or the year after for his payday. What do you think about the contract? Let's first start with that, Mateo.
Well, first, congratulations, man. It's a really good day for, the elite of the league when someone who is anywhere between, I think objectively, the 15th to 25th best player, and
Yeah,
20
that's
very low end, very low end. Anywhere between there, getting the richest deal in history. This dude owes Glushan, a paid vacation. Of course, um, his representation fee, I'm sure, will be sweet. But Jaylen Brown is a very good player. When this was done, you kind of immediately knew that the Boston Celtics were immediately out of the Damian Lillard equation. I hate to bring him up again, but you know how Northeastern media had tried to like promote the idea of what about Boston? Like I think it was Dan Patrick who on his show was asking about it weeks ago to Chris Haynes when they were promoting it. But this totally takes them out just in case they're one of the teams that wants to like bite the bullet. Jaylen Brown, again, great player. I think a lot of his criticisms about the left hand or over. Yeah, it is a weak.
I
left hand.
agree. I've seen so many memes. It's not as bad as people make it seem to be. It's just fun to talk about because a lot of the people I follow are Heat fans, and it's our rival Celtics team. So let's make fun of him.
I concur, and it's just this dude is averaging over like 25 a game, and he can get a bucket and go where he wants to with his right hand anyway. So it's really kind of dumb to say, oh, like his left hand is weak. He goes anywhere with his right. So the Boston Celtics are in a good place. I don't think it's a terrible deal. Well, let me rephrase that, because the average yearly salary is around 60 million. But if he got that money, Rob, listen, Jaylen Brown, the next person up will get around the same ballpark. Like when Nikola Jokic is up for an extension, he might crack like over 400 million. You know what I'm saying? Like
So
Jason Tatum will definitely get something like in the 330 range.
it's interesting you say that. It's interesting
Yeah.
you say that. Not to cut you off, because the first player who I think legitimately is eligible to get $400 million in the time frame it is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the OKC Thunder. There's a pretty good chance he's going to get $400 million. He's really the real star that's lined up next to within the timeline of the CBA to get that much money.
Well, here's the thing. When it has to do with I think making All NBA multiple seasons consecutively, or like at least 2 out of 3 in the extension year, and I think the awards do help as well. But Shai is a big time player. It's so funny you bring him up, because privately I have been saying this whole summer that I would prefer to have on my team Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over Jason Tatum. And the reason is it's just Shai takes fewer 3-pointers. I think he has better footwork, and I admire how he plays. He's always going inside of the paint, or he wants to make his money more at close range, and he doesn't do a lot of that nonsensical stuff of ball pounding outside on the perimeter that Jason does. But he is someone, I don't know if he could get specifically that amount, but at the level he's playing, Robin, how I see OKC on the rise, it wouldn't strike me as strange if he got this type of money that more than Jaylen Brown is getting. No doubt. Because here's the thing: if you ask me right now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Jaylen Brown, I'm taking Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
I will say this: a lot of people, I get it. A lot of people are busy with jobs and don't understand the CBA as much, and they look at the Jaylen Brown contract and they say, "Holy smokes, $304 million for a star, but not a superstar." Right? I think we're both in agree with that. But for people watching, listen, it's the way the NBA is going. The next guy is going to get 360. The next one's going to get 4. At some point down the road, we're going to have players making $500 million that are along Jaylen Brown's caliber. It's just the way the NBA is going. It's getting bigger. Money's coming in more. I mean, this is not like the 20 years ago, 15 years ago, where we saw guys signing for $40 million. It's just the way it goes. Social media, the game has gone global. I mean, we're going to see guys get tons of money soon. So, I mean, right now it may look like a big deal, but in 5 years from now, 4 years from now, this might be look like a steal for the Celtics. The real number is going to be when Jaylen Brown signs. What are they going to give him?
Wait, you mean Jason Tatum?
Jason Tatum. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, like that. Could you imagine just having two guys on the roster who, at the end of their deal, it combines to over $700 million?
Yeah.
This is cause for some pause because, listen, I know some dudes will be the next up, and congratulations to Jaylen Brown and Jason Bouchon for getting him this deal. But I anticipate, there will be situations where teams are like, we can't do this, or they will try to trade the player before making such
Yeah.
making such a deal because living up to that is a lot. I know with the new CBA money kicking in, it won't be as the blow won't be as impactful to the salary cap. But listen, at the end of the day, like you're paying someone $60 million, like.
Yeah.
It's still $60 million, and there's a boatload of expectations, and like I feel like people are thinking like now because the money is going up now that everybody is going to be paid, there's going to be fewer or lower expectations for guys making like 25 million. It's like, no, man, they're still going to expect you to do a whole lot. This is just ridiculous money. And we're going to talk about some more crazy money in a minute.
It is, man. Look, at the end of the day, that's the way the NBA is going. Congrats to Jaylen Brown. Really good player, really good talent. He's obviously proven that they can get to the finals with him. The left-handed stuff, I think, is an overreaction. Obviously, needs to work on his dribbling more. He's never going to be Kyrie with the ball, but he's still a damn good player. Defensively, he took a step down in the playoffs, but we've seen, in recent past that he can step up to the plate defensively if he wants. I think that's just more of an energy point at this thing and more of an effort thing. But look, he deserves it. He's a really good player. Last thing on that, Mateo.
Yeah, actually, I would hate to miss this point, Rob. He said he wanted to invest a lot of his money in the community, specifically like making like a Black Wall Street, like in his area, and that's amazing. And someone like him, a star, just genuinely, thinking of other people is the league needs more people like Jaylen Brown. That's the last thing I wanted to say on that.
Yeah, good point. Obviously, the community and the world needs more of that. So good for Jaylen. He's going to get a lot of money. I believe what he says. I know he's going to turn it around for that community, and good for him, man. Deserving. So with that said, let's move on to kind of off topic, which brings it back into topic. But we're going to talk about Kylian Mbappe. I'm sure a lot of people who don't follow soccer knows who Mbappe is. He's arguably the best player in the world. He has he's in the names of, not career yet, but in the popularity of names of like Messi and Ronaldo, those type of caliber players, Erling Haaland from Manchester City, the guys like that. But the Saudi Arabia has made a lot of noise really within the last year. They signed Cristiano Ronaldo to a lot of money. Now we saw reports that Kylian Mbappe got offered $778 million for 1 year from Saudi Arabia.
It totals up 776 for the whole deal. I think it's 220 million annually. Excuse me, sorry.
Okay, but what's crazy about that is Saudi Arabia is obviously making a name in their sports headway, as we saw with Live Golf. They're signing some of the top players, and then ultimately they merged with the PGA after PGA said they refused to ever negotiate with them. They ultimately made it work, and now they're combined in one league. But with that said, Kylian Mbappe turned down a lot of money, and that got us thinking: can we see Saudi Arabia potentially dipping their toes with maybe potential players like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, if it ever comes to that point, players like that with that caliber, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, the top players in our league. Should we be worried as NBA fans that Saudi Arabia will come in and offer, 3 or 4 times as much as these max contracts are for players to play there for 1, 2, 3, 4 years? I think it's a real question to ask at this point. Whether it's going to happen or not, I don't know, but I think it's just an interesting thing to have a conversation about. So with that said, what do you think, man?
Hypothetically, like I feel like they have the resources to make this happen. Let's not, confuse that. If they wanted to really soup up their Saudi Premier League, which is the basketball league, they have the money to do so. And when you think of what's going on with the merger of the PGA and Live, they bought their way into golf, and they're whitewashing their human rights abuses. And it's not like this would be private citizens or private companies getting involved. Like, this would be teams backed by the Public Investment Fund, which the chairman is Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince. That man is a thug. He had Jamal Khashoggi killed and chopped up because he didn't like what was said about him. And apart from that, other human rights abuses that the Saudi Arabian murderous regime is doing is, they perform torture as punishment in police custody. They have executions are on the rise. Free speech is not allowed. Unlawful arrests are made. They also discriminate against women. They've deported a bunch of migrant workers and banned a bunch of human rights organizations. When you look at the type of money they have, I'm not sure if you will see like the star players, because I'm sure a lot of them are really worried about legacy, but the middle class, specifically guys who were expecting to get paid a lot of money in free agency, but are very surprised to see that a mid-level exception, or in worst case scenario, a veteran minimum is the best thing that's looking for them. Could they potentially look around if, hypothetically, the Saudi Arabians soup up their league and start offering more deals and come? Why not? If they're being offered, a bunch of money that the NBA teams would never, dream of offering, they could really, hypothetically make a league just, poaching the below middle class or the bench players of other leagues.
That is a great point, man. That is a very good point. Listen, for example, the way the CBA is for the NBA, it's basically saying you can have 2 max players, and then the rest you got to fill out your bench, maybe 1 or 2 middle tier contracts and the rest mid-level. Or you can have 1 superstar and build it out, the way you want with real money, but not with another superstar. That's a great point. For example, I'm just going to give an example. Let's say Caleb Martin's do a new contract next year. Let's say that he can only give him 2 years, 25 million. I'm just throwing out a number. Well, let's say Saudi Arabia goes there and says, listen, we'll give you 2 years for $100 million. No problem. You played in the NBA finals. You're a good player. Everyone knows who you are now. Come play in our league. Be the ambassador here. People will follow your lead. Then we'll see guys with more mid levels come here. I think that's more of a realistic thing than actual superstars leaving the NBA to go to Saudi Arabia.
No doubt there'd be some guys who are so strong of character and realize what's done over there and be like, thanks but no thanks. But there are some people who won't pass it up, and that'll be really sad. And truthfully, I don't like this idea. I thought it was crazy how they bought their way into golf. Listen, I have no interest in watching golf anymore. And here's the thing: I'm someone who, if you ask me to play on the weekends, I'm very interested. I have very much respect for the craft. It takes a lot of skill. It's super hard to actually hit the golf ball, but watching it on TV, I have no interest in watching any of that stuff now because of, now people who are killers, being involved in a sport. That's disgusting.
Yeah, man. Look, the way I see it is, and by the way, for people who don't know the story, the top soccer player in the world, Kylian Mbappe, turned down that deal from Saudi Arabia because he put more importance on wanting to win champions and be a global name. If he goes to Saudi Arabia, his name won't be as big because what are you going to win there? Champions League is big in there. You can get so many more promotion deals out of that. Ultimately, it's just better for his career, his legacy. At some point, when you have so much money, what's the point of getting all that? I mean, it doesn't help. For Ronaldo, I understood. Listen, he was 34, going the back end of his career. I mean, there's not much money to be made left, so I understand why you take a big deal there. But guys in the middle of their prime want to win an NBA championship, and what that does for your career and for your name and what it does globally for for the amount of opportunities it can do for you is way bigger, I think, than what you can achieve with Saudi Arabia. So on that aspect, I think that's why I don't see potentially any stars leaving. The only one that would entertain it, I think, would be Kyrie Irving. But other than that, for these middle class players, you make a great point. They're, at some point, they're going to have to figure out something in the NBA because it's either you pay your two stars and then you fill out the rest with lower mid class contracts. So I will say the middle class does get a little bit screwed here.
Yeah, it not a very good deal by the top members of the Players Association, Grant Williams, CJ McCollum. Like you just described it well. Like if you pay pretty much two stars well, you got to pretty much well, the most of the guys who are on the squad that are left over are going to be paid like scrubs, or not relative to their worth, which is very sad. But I want to touch real quick on Ronaldo. I just have a feeling he's just going to waste away into irrelevancy over there. Did you hear him the week that Messi has his debut, or I think a day or two after Messi has a day? Excuse me, could have been a day before. When Messi had just gotten to his new club, and he says it's harder. The competition is much harder over here than in MLS. Like, does anybody really take him seriously? Like, my goodness.
And then he scores 3 goals in 2 games. So listen, at the end of the day, it's a lot of money. I see what Saudi Arabia is doing. I don't blame Saudi Arabia, by the way. They have all that oil money, so I don't blame them trying them to make their league better. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't, as an NBA fan, I wouldn't be worried about the star players leaving, but I would be a little bit concerned about the middle class players, as you touched on earlier. Any last words on that?
Listen, man, people would take their wanting to get into sports like golf, or if hypothetically they wanted to like really revamp their basketball, people would take it more seriously if they started treating other people, other cultures with respect, or at least treat their women right. That would be a start.
Yeah. All right, let's get into one last thing before we go. That is Dwayne Wade versus Paul Pierce. As I said, we're running out of stuff to talk about during the offseason, and Paul Pierce has made his way through the regime of really going through D Wade's career and knocking what he's done. This is a guy who's nicknamed called the Truth, and obviously he's not been speaking a lot of it, basically defending his crown, saying, hey, look, I had a better career than Dwayne Wade. I know Jalen Rose embarrassed me a couple years ago on live TV. I still stand by that. I still believe I had a better career. I also am going to say that if Damian Lillard comes to the Miami Heat, not only are they not going to make the NBA Finals, they're not going to make the NBA playoffs. He just says a lot of ludicrous things. The reason we're even bringing him up is because he's talking about a Heat legend named Dwayne Wade. So I'll give you most of what you want to say about that.
We've been calling Paul Pierce the delusion around here for some stuff. It's really sad that because he is so unprepared when he used to like be on ESPN, and he's so annoying that people don't take him seriously. And here's the thing, man. He wasn't the best player in the world, which I think Dwayne arguably was competing for with LeBron and Kobe for some time. But Paul Pierce was like maybe a tier 2, definitely tier 3. Like,
he was a really good player. Like, I'm not going to diminish it. Like, the guy was a really good player. He has a championship. I mean, in his prime, he was really tough to beat with those Celtics teams. LeBron even came out and said, listen, like, I left the Cavs and joined the Heat to beat the Celtics. That's a really damn good team.
In the fourth quarter, like, there weren't very many players better than Paul Pierce. Like, Shaquille O'Neal, I think after one game in 2001, went over to like a Boston Globe reporter and said Paul Pierce was the fucking truth. Like game recognizes game. And here's the thing: when I think it was the 2015 season, when he was like already mostly cooked, but now a wizard, he got a forced switch on Dennis Schroeder at the elbow, and it's actually at the very end, it's contested by like a triple team, and he makes a bank shot, and Chris Broussard asks him if he called bank, and he's like, I called game. Like, I'm not to like gas up Paul Pierce, but that's like really one of the coldest moments like I've seen live, like with a player interview. But is he Dwayne Wade? No. Like, here's the thing: like as a 3-level scorer, he had the 3-point shot that Dwayne Wade did not have. He had probably very underrated footwork. Dwayne definitely had the the post mid-range shot, especially later in his career. But Paul had a lot of that, especially early, and he was a deceptive athlete. And what made Paul very great, or at least in my view, is that he didn't look like the most athletic guy, and he was faster than you'd think, but he would also beat you with his handle. You'd think he was going right, but he was going left, and you'd hit a deep jumper on you. But he's not Dwayne Wade. He's not a three-time champion. Now to stick with Dwayne, as a third-year player, he was the best player on a championship team. And for most of that regular season, Rob, in 2006, Shaquille O'Neal was an MVP candidate. The way the Dallas Mavericks were throwing out schemes at him, Dwayne Wade, eviscerated a lot of the coverages. Shaq was only averaging 13 and 10 in that series, which is a whole lot different than pretty much the 20 and 11 in the regular season. But here's the thing. Dwayne Wade became the Flash real early in his career, and was the reason, the main reason LeBron James came to the Miami Heat. When Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen came to Boston, Paul Pierce was no longer the best player in the green. That was Kevin Garnett. I know he won the Finals MVP that year in 2008, but truthfully, I think Kevin Garnett was the best player on that team.
Yeah, one of the greatest things I ever saw was on YouTube when Jalen Rose goes, "Let's dissect what you just said." All right, so Dwayne Wade has more scoring titles than you. Dwayne Wade has more MVPs than you. Dwayne Wade has more championships than you, and the list goes on and on. And Paul Pierce is just like, "Oh, I don't know." But look, I'm not gonna knock Paul Pierce. The guy was a really good player. He has a championship, which is extremely hard to do. There's some top players in the world that still don't have one. He has one. He was really the main guy on that Celtics team, along with Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. So, I mean, the guy was a good player. Let's not diminish that. But some of the things he's saying is just, outlandish and ludicrous. And to his point about Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler, and Bam not making the playoffs if they acquire him is just stupid. Is a stupid comment. It's obviously for attention. They would obviously make the playoffs. They would be one of the best 8 teams in the East. And if that didn't happen, that'd be one of the biggest disappointments in NBA history. So, to say that, I think is a little bit is a reach.
That comment about Lillard not severe or really helping the Heat. Paul Pierce could still be upset how the LeBron led Heat had a big part of retiring his days in Boston, because he pretty much only played one more year after the 2012 season. Well, not pretty much, only played one more year after the 2012 season, which they were up 3-2 in the Eastern Conference Finals against Miami, and of course lost Game 6 in Boston and Game 7 in Miami. But listen, I think Paul Pierce was more than a good player. He's really one of the great ones, and I think back fondly to that era because it was a bunch of oversized jerseys. It was a more physical era. It was a bunch of trash talking. One of the ultimate compliments you can pay Paul Pierce is, and this is a comment I actually read on his NBA video of his top 34 plays. He wore number 34. The top comment on there is, half of his highlights are in HD and the others are not. Like, that's how long he was good for. And like, Paul Pierce was as good as a scorer as it got late. Like, yeah. if you need a bucket, like, here's the thing. In terms of like the actual total of game winners recorded by all the great players, I think only Michael, Kobe, and LeBron are ahead of him. Like, this dude like would hit some clutch shots late. So he wasn't Dwayne, but he's still a great player. But the sad part is, because he's kind of, misogynistic, very unprepared for basketball debate. Frankly, kind of annoying. Nobody's going to take him seriously ever.
Yeah. That's as much as I'm going to say on Paul Pierce. There's other laminish things he said over his career, but look, I'm not going to diminish what he did as a player, but I thought that was a little bit stupid. But overall, Mateo, look, the NBA season is itching closer. Still a little bit of ways away, but at least we're getting there. Summer League is over. We'll have more to talk about. We'll have you on. We're going to do this next week. I'm sure there'll be more things to come on, but like always, go ahead, Mateo.
Who you got tonight in the fight? Like I know we won't be able to. We'll probably talk about it on our next episode briefly, but who do you got?
I want to ask you, who do you got?
my official prediction is the draw between Spence and Crawford. Look, it really could come either way. The experts are saying that Crawford is the best switch hitter in like the last 40 years, like since like Marvin Hagler. But I'm really if I had to pick someone I'm favoring, it's Spence. But again, my ultimate prediction is the draw.
I actually have Crawford winning, so we'll see, man. It's gonna be fun to watch. I just recently got into UFC like 5 months ago, so I'm still picking up the sport, but I definitely know who these two guys are. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Not an expert, but yeah.
Boxing, UFC. Well, UFC also has a card tonight, but I know what you mean. I know.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, I'm taking Crawford.
Absolutely, that sounds fabulous. I can't wait to watch tonight.
Yeah. All right, man. Have a good one.
Have a good one, man. You too.
All right.